Would you embrace this fate or be utterly terrified? This profound psychological test was designed by Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche called this thought experiment eternal recurrence, and your reaction reveals something crucial about your relationship with your past. Today, we'll explore how this concept might hold the key to transforming your relationship with suffering and finding meaningful purpose in every aspect of your life, even the parts you currently wish you could erase. If you're ready to rethink life through Nietzsche's lens, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas that can change how you see the world and yourself. What if the weight you carry from your past is actually optional? Most of us walk through life burdened by a collection of regrets that color our present moment. We replay conversations that ended poorly, opportunities we let slip through our fingers, and relationships that fractured under the weight of our mistakes. These regrets become heavy stones in an invisible backpack, pressing down on our shoulders with each step forward. The human mind fixates on what went wrong. You can likely recall an embarrassing moment from years ago while struggling to remember yesterday's compliment. This isn't your personal failing, but a feature of our cognitive architecture. Our brains evolved to prioritize negative experiences as a survival mechanism. Remembering dangers helped our ancestors stay alive. In our modern context, however, this mechanism creates a psychological prison of what-ifs and if-onlys. Take James, a software developer who declined a job at a startup that later became wildly successful. 10 years later, he still calculates how much wealth he missed while remaining blind to the stability and family time his actual career path provided. During important meetings, his mind drifts to the pivotal decision rather than focusing on present opportunities. We believe rumination serves a purpose. Perhaps by mentally revisiting mistakes, we protect ourselves from future errors. There's truth here. Reflection can lead to growth. But cognitive psychology research reveals something troubling. Excessive rumination compounds suffering rather than alleviating it. When we continuously replay painful memories, we strengthen neural pathways associated with those experiences, making them more accessible in daily consciousness. This toll manifests physically. Dwelling on regrets activates our sympathetic nervous system, triggering stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this chronic stress creates muscle tension, disrupted sleep, and compromised immune function. Our bodies respond similarly to physical threats and painful memories, transforming regrets into embodied discomfort. The psychological impact extends beyond distraction. Persistent regret cultivates anxiety as we become hypervigilant against repeating past mistakes. It feeds depression through a lens of failure and inadequacy, erodes self-worth, and fragments our identity as we reject parts of our history. Our relationship with our past directly determines our capacity for present joy. When we refuse to accept the totality of our experiences, we create a foundation of resistance. Like building on shifting sand, any happiness becomes unstable, vulnerable to collapse when memories resurface. This pattern isn't new. Throughout history, philosophers, spiritual teachers, and psychologists have recognized how humans create suffering through resistance to what has occurred. Ancient Stoics advised distinguishing between what we can and cannot control, the past firmly among the latter. Buddhist teachings emphasize that suffering arises from our resistance to pain, not pain itself. Modern approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy echo these insights, recognizing that psychological flexibility requires accepting our complete history. When we refuse to accept parts of our past, we create a fragmented self-identity. Imagine constructing a coherent narrative while rejecting chapters that don't fit your preferred story. The result requires constant maintenance. We expend enormous energy maintaining these internal divisions, energy that might otherwise fuel creativity and connection. We're like someone trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The force required exhausts us while the ball continues straining toward the surface. But what if there were a radical philosophical approach to transform this relationship with our past? What if, instead of struggling against what cannot be changed, we found a way to incorporate even our most painful experiences into a coherent, meaningful narrative. Enter Friedrich Nietzsche and his most challenging thought experiment, a philosophical tool designed to confront us with our relationship to our own existence and offer a path beyond the prison of regret. Philosophers have long proposed thought experiments to illuminate truth, but the one Nietzsche devised while wandering the Swiss mountains might be the most psychologically revealing test ever conceived. Consider how you'd respond if a demon appeared tonight to inform you that your life, exactly as it has unfolded, with every moment of suffering intact, must be lived again and again in an endless cycle of repetition. The visceral reaction that just flashed through your mind, whether horror, acceptance, or something between, reveals more about your relationship with your existence than perhaps any other metric. Friedrich Nietzsche was intimately acquainted with suffering. Born in 19th century Germany, he endured debilitating migraines, persistent stomach ailments, and deteriorating vision that nearly blinded him. Despite writing his most profound works while battling these conditions, often producing only a few pages before pain overtook him, his genius remained largely unrecognized during his productive years. It was against this backdrop of personal suffering that Nietzsche formulated what he called the heaviest weight in his work, The Gay Science. The thought experiment emerged from his acquaintance with pain and isolation, giving the exercise its remarkable authenticity. It comes from someone who understood suffering as lived reality. The original formulation in The Gay Science presents the scenario with haunting clarity. Nietzsche asks us to imagine a demon appearing in our loneliest loneliness, pronouncing that every moment of our life, every pain, every embarrassment, every ordinary Tuesday afternoon would repeat infinitely, with nothing new added and nothing subtracted. How would you feel knowing that every tear, every regret, every failure would return precisely as it occurred the first time? That every decision you ever made would be made again identically, with no opportunity for revision? What makes this thought experiment so powerful is that Nietzsche isn't offering a cosmological theory about how the universe actually functions. He's presenting a psychological test, a mirror that reflects our relationship with our own existence. The question isn't whether this scenario could happen. The question is how we respond emotionally when confronted with this possibility. Now let's consider what our responses reveal about our psychological state. For most people, the initial reaction is profound resistance or terror. The thought of reliving painful experiences, grief, heartbreak, humiliation, failure, infinitely becomes unbearable. This instinctive recoil reveals something important. If the prospect of eternal recurrence fills you with dread, it suggests you haven't fully accepted your life as it is. There are parts you wish could be erased, decisions you would change, paths not taken that still haunt you. This thought experiment forces a confrontation with the totality of one's existence. Unlike ordinary reflection, where we might focus selectively on highlights or carefully curated memories, eternal recurrence demands we face everything, the brilliant alongside the shameful, the beautiful alongside the painful. It asks whether you would be willing to repeat not just your achievements, but also your sorrows, not just your moments of connection, but also those of profound loneliness. What makes this challenge profound is that it strips away our usual psychological defenses. We can't dismiss painful experiences as just temporary or console ourselves that this too shall pass. In Nietzsche's scenario, nothing passes permanently. Everything returns exactly as it was. This forces a radical reevaluation of how we relate to suffering. Those who recoil in horror are confronted with the reality that they have not fully accepted their lives. They still live in resistance to aspects of their past, carrying the weight of regret and the burden of what-ifs. Their resistance indicates a fragmented relationship with their own history. Conversely, those rare individuals who might greet the demon's news with acceptance have achieved what Nietzsche considered the highest psychological state, complete affirmation of life exactly as it is. This doesn't mean they haven't suffered. It means they've incorporated their suffering into a coherent narrative they can embrace in its entirety, recognizing that removing even painful experiences would fundamentally alter who they've become. The shift in perspective Nietzsche suggests sounds simple, but it confronts one of our most deeply ingrained human tendencies. Every day, we unconsciously split ourselves in two: the actual self who experienced life exactly as it happened, and an idealized self who navigated a carefully edited version of that same journey. The distance between these two selves creates a peculiar form of suffering that feels entirely normal until examined. This psychological splitting stems from ancient survival mechanisms hardwired into our neural architecture. Our ancestors needed an immediate aversion to physical pain to avoid threats, a response that served them well in environments filled with predators and dangers. This reflexive avoidance of pain, this instinctual recoiling from what hurts, kept our species alive for millennia. Something interesting happens when this mechanism extends beyond physical threats to our memories and self-narrative. The brain doesn't readily distinguish between physical and psychological pain. Both activate similar neural circuits. When we remember embarrassment, failure, or loss, our mind treats these memories as threats to avoid rather than experiences to integrate. We instinctively push away what hurts, even when that hurt exists only in memory. This avoidance creates a disconnect between our lived experience and our internal narrative. We construct sanitized versions of our past where mistakes weren't so grievous, where suffering wasn't so acute, where disappointments were less crushing. Each time we revisit a painful memory, we subtly alter it, softening edges, adding justifications, removing responsibility. These edited memories become the foundation of our idealized self-image. Imagine this internal process as a constant tug-of-war. One team, our authentic self, pulls toward truthful integration of all experiences. The opposing team, our protective mechanisms, pulls toward a comfortable but incomplete narrative. This battle wages beneath our conscious awareness, draining our energy and creating persistent tension. Consider Sarah, a talented professional who made a significant error during a presentation 5 years ago. Though the consequences were temporary, she experiences anxiety before every presentation. Her mind has created a narrative where she's just not good at public speaking, despite evidence to the contrary. The energy she spends maintaining this distorted self-image manifests as chronic tension, sleep disruption, and diminished confidence in unrelated areas. What makes this process so insidious is its invisibility. We rarely catch ourselves rewriting history. The mind performs these edits automatically, below conscious awareness. This isn't lying. It's psychological self-protection that happens without deliberate choice. Yet this unconscious editing creates cognitive dissonance, a tension between what actually happened and what we tell ourselves happened. Modern culture amplifies this tendency. Social media platforms offer unprecedented opportunities to curate our public narratives, showing only carefully selected moments that reinforce our idealized self-image. We scroll through feeds filled with others doing the same, creating a collective illusion of lives without significant failure or regret. The costs of maintaining this divided self-image are substantial. Research suggests that reconciling competing narratives creates chronic stress, anxiety, and diminished self-worth. The energy required to maintain this psychological facade prevents authentic connection with others. Perhaps most importantly, this resistance to our complete history creates a second layer of suffering on top of the original painful experiences. The initial pain, the rejection, the failure, the loss might have been intense but temporary. The ongoing resistance becomes a permanent feature of our psychological landscape. The fragmentation between our actual and idealized selves creates a form of time travel where we're constantly trying to revise a past that cannot be changed. We exhaust ourselves swimming against currents of time, fighting battles that were concluded years ago. The truly radical suggestion in Nietzsche's thought experiment is that complete acceptance of our past is a practical path to freedom from this self-created suffering. The experiment reveals that our instinctive resistance to painful experiences is based on a fundamental misunderstanding: the belief that rejecting parts of our past will somehow free us from their influence. This misunderstanding operates on a simple confusion. We believe that accepting painful experiences means approving of them. But acceptance doesn't require approval. It simply acknowledges reality as it actually unfolded. Resistance doesn't change what happened, it only changes our
relationship with what happened.
While most of us struggle to merely accept our difficult past, Nietzsche proposed something far more transformative than reluctant acknowledgement. What if the path to freedom isn't gritting your teeth through painful memories, but embracing them with such totality that you wouldn't change a single moment, even if you could? This radical proposition is encapsulated in what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. The phrase sounds deceptively simple, but it represents one of the most challenging philosophical concepts ever conceived. Amor fati means developing an enthusiastic affirmation of everything that has transpired in your life. This Latin phrase invites us to actively love and affirm our entire existence. The joyful moments alongside the painful ones, the wise decisions alongside the mistaken ones. Consider Sarah, who spent decades regretting a career choice that led to financial struggles. Her inner dialogue constantly replayed how different life would be if only she had chosen differently. This created a persistent background tension as she simultaneously lived in the present while mentally rejecting her past. Compare this with Marcus, who, after losing his business during an economic downturn, eventually came to see that experience as essential to developing resilience and creativity he never would have discovered otherwise. Where Sarah remained fractured by resistance to her past, Marcus integrated his painful experience into a coherent life narrative. The distinction between passive resignation and active affirmation is crucial. Many practice a form of grudging acceptance, acknowledging painful realities while harboring inner resistance. We say, "Yes, that happened," but silently continue, "And I wish it hadn't." This creates conflict within ourselves, a subtle but persistent rejection of reality that keeps us tethered to suffering. Nietzsche articulated amor fati most powerfully when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati." That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. This declaration stands in opposition to our tendency to divide our past into acceptable and unacceptable portions. The invitation is to stop fighting against immutable facts of your history and embrace them as essential components of who you are. The context of Nietzsche's life makes this philosophy remarkable. Far from being abstract musings from someone who knew only comfort, amor fati emerged from profound personal suffering. Throughout his life, Nietzsche encountered chronic illness, romantic rejection, professional disappointment, and eventual mental collapse. His philosophy emerged directly through these struggles. After years of resistance toward his circumstances, he discovered that attempting to mentally rewrite his past only magnified his suffering. His experience mirrors what modern acceptance-based therapies recognize. Our relationship with difficult experiences matters more than the experiences themselves.